Hello, everyone, and welcome to another inspiring episode of Coffee with Convery. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with Sam Goodwin, a remarkable individual whose life story reads like an adventure novel. Sam is not only an entrepreneur and a professional speaker, but also one of the few people in history to have traveled to all 193 countries in the world. Wow, that's super impressive. His journey, however, took an unexpected turn when he was captured and wrongfully imprisoned in Syria. Sam's new book, Saving Sam, the true story of an American's disappearance in Syria and his family's extraordinary fight to bring him home, recounts this harrowing experience and the incredible efforts to secure his release. From his global travels to his time in captivity, Sam has gained unique insights on embracing uncertainty, the power of family, and what it truly means to be free. As an international keynote speaker, Sam now inspires audiences worldwide, sharing lessons on resilience, faith, and also turning adversity into opportunity. With a doctorate in international affairs from Johns Hopkins and his work on the multiple advocacy board, Sam brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our conversation today. Let's dive into Sam's extraordinary journey and wisdom, and let's have some fun with the conversation. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to get this going and again hear about this book that you have coming out next week. I'm super excited and congratulations on that journey as well.
Yeah, thank you. I am a first-time author, so the whole publishing world was like a giant black hole to me. I didn't know anything about it, but thankfully I've been surrounded by some really great people, a great publisher, a great publicist, and just great mentors along the way and feel really I'm really excited about putting this out. It's been a few year project, so um, it's a fun time, and I'm excited to kind of work as hard on it as I can, but also have fun with the release.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we'll get into that in a few seconds here. I wanted to get going maybe with some few rapid fire questions just so the audience here and the listeners can maybe get a little bit of insights into the guy Sam and who he is. So, what is your superpower?
Um, I don't know if I have. I would say if I could have any superpower, it would be to time travel, to go forward. That's what I'd like to do.
Okay, okay. Do you have a favorite smell?
Maybe the new car smell.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good
I
one.
actually don't even own a car, but I like the new car smell.
There you go. There you go. Um, Always curious to hear this answer too, because I think it gives us some insights into what others think. But what is the best compliment you've ever received?
Mm, Gosh, I'm not sure. I think what comes to mind when I think about that, and a friend of mine recently said something like this, but sometimes I'm asked, how do you want to be remembered, or
Hmm.
what do you want to be known for? And I always say that I want to be known as someone who gave more than I took. And someone recently said something like that to me, and that was one of the best compliments I think I've ever received.
I love that. I love that. Um, Guilty pleasures, snacks. What's your go-to snack?
It's probably a little more than a snack, but I would say a Chipotle burrito.
Ah, yeah, those are good, aren't they? Yeah,
Just
those.
had one about an hour ago.
Oh, now you're making me hungry because I haven't had dinner. I gotta get um, talking about school and thinking about the audience here, as we're getting started, range of young people listening to this podcast, and curious about what was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject was geography, and
Geo?
I actually wasn't always the best student in school, but geography was this outlier, and I actually won my third grade geography bee. And I still remember, I as a prize for winning, I was given a 2-night homework pass, which I'll never forget.
Oh, like a 2 night no homework.
No homework.
Oh boy, in the third grade, that would have been big.
Those were coveted.
Yeah, I would say. Thinking about jobs, opportunities, again, top of mind for our listeners. We all start somewhere. What was your first job?
Uh, my first job was working in the basketball gym of of a recreational facility in St. Louis in high school, or
Okay.
in maybe even in middle school. But I worked in the gym and made sure that people signed in when they came in.
All right. All right. Make sure everyone's there, make sure they're accounted for. Um,
Exactly.
if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you use?
Um, I'm not sure. Maybe if I was going to say something positive, I would say maybe thoughtful.
Thoughtful? That's a good word. I like that. I like that. All right, so let's jump into your story. I I was been following you on social media and your public speaking career and things for a little while here, but let's talk about your book, Saving Sam, and maybe jump into a little bit of the details into the capture in Syria, your family's efforts to bring you home, and maybe share moments from that experience that profoundly, of course, have changed their perspective on life, I would imagine.
Yeah, no doubt. Quick background. So from 2010 to 2020, during those 10 years, most of which I spent living and working overseas in Singapore and later in Dubai. I traveled to every country in the world, and
Yeah.
like any worthwhile venture or endeavor in life, it wasn't without its challenges. And perhaps most notably, in the spring of 2019, I traveled to Syria, which was country 181 of 193. I was very much in the home stretch, and I was taken hostage and accused of espionage, of being an American spy, of collaborating with terrorists, and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. And I was held for 9 weeks, for 63 days, and in some pretty uncomfortable situations. And thank God, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, the situation ended peacefully, and I was released on July 26th, 2019. And in the wake of that, I had quite a bit to process of trying to put things into context and perspective and really answer the question of what does all this mean? I view the world through a spiritual lens. I felt like I
Hmm.
had been given that for a reason. I started to realize how fortunate I was, and that many of the cases like this don't end the way that mine did. And I don't want to be known for the things that happened to me. I want to be known for the way that I've responded to them.
Hmm.
And I hope that the readers of this book will adopt a similar mindset and implement it into their own personal, professional lives. So essentially, the book is, on one hand, what I think is an unforgettable story that includes this travel journey to every country in the world, heads of state, high stakes diplomacy, celebrities. But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, it's about what we all learn through this experience that I think can help others today. So, as you were mentioning in your intro, it's about how we can all turn our own challenges and adversities into assets, into opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at with this story, and that's the crux of the book.
And first of all, like, and thank you for sharing that. I don't know that type of experience and how it might trigger things or talking, but maybe by writing that book, it might have been therapeutic as well in a way to get it out. I don't know if that's the words to use, but
Therapeutic is a word that is accurate, at least for
okay.
me, and others deal with their situations differently, but it's been therapeutic. And actually, I've also launched and run my own speaking business now. And when I'm speaking and sharing this story and the messages around it, I often think to myself when I'm on stage looking out at an audience, I think, uh, congratulations to everyone here. This is now partly your problem too. I feel as if I'm almost spreading out the burden
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit. So
Yeah.
actually talking about it for me has been therapeutic and has been helpful. Again, other people process their challenges and situations differently, but for me, it's been helpful, and putting it out in print, in book form as well, has also been something that I'm excited about.
Very cool. I gotta ask you, like, what inspired you, going back a little bit, to think about this trek around the world? And yeah, and like I know you said that was work related too, so just for the listeners to understand how it all began, I'm curious. I'm curious too.
Yeah, so I went to undergrad in upstate New York at Niagara University. I played
Yeah.
hockey there, which is what brought me up that way. And when I graduated, I had an opportunity to take my first professional job. This was after working in the gym uh, in Singapore, and I originally only planned to be in Singapore for about 3 months, but I ended up staying for 6 years, and it was a fantastic opportunity, a great way to begin my professional career. I was working for a tech startup business and a regional NGO that was doing development work around Southeast Asia. And throughout this time, I I traveled as much as I could. I was in my early 20s,
Yeah.
had a little bit of flexibility in my work schedule. I had the world's best airport in my backyard, and I took advantage of the opportunity to explore as much of the region and beyond as possible. And the way that this all kind of started was that just a personal preference when I traveled, I didn't like to repeat places. So
Okay.
even if I went somewhere and had a fantastic experience, the next weekend, the next holiday, the next opportunity I had, I would just go somewhere different. And I put this formula into play for about 6 years. And in early 2018, I realized that I had traveled to about 120 countries in the world.
Wow.
And it was at that point when I remember thinking, well, how many are there? For me, travel was always about learning and understanding. It was never, travel was the best education I'd ever had. It
Sure
was
is.
never about ticking boxes or checking places off a list. But I got to that point, did a little bit of research. I learned that there are 193 fully recognized UN sovereign states, and I thought, well, maybe I could go to all of them. And the competitive athlete kicked in, likes to set goals and work toward achieving them, and that was how it all started.
That is so cool. And so it's inspiring too. Like I think it's like there's probably listeners here because I think a lot of young people too, right out of well, like right out of school too, sometimes even take a gap year to travel and do things
Mm-hmm.
before they settle into work
Mm-hmm.
because as you're going through all those transitions, it's like back to back to back to back. And sometimes it's nice to
Mm-hmm.
take a little bit of a break and hopefully maybe it'll inspire some of the listeners to take a ride and look at some of these things culturally and everything, which leads me to my next question, because we're living in such a global economy and where I live in Toronto too, it's such a diverse culture of people coming together in the workplace. We have the multi-generations, but we also have all these backgrounds. So what what things have you learned from like the human nature or global culture side of things through this adventure of yours that might be
Mm-hmm.
something for our listeners to reflect on?
Travel's taught me so many things, like how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, about the power of perspective. I've learned that every everywhere I went, I found people, and we're all fundamentally the same. We're all the overwhelming majority of people in the world are well intentioned, proud of their country, happy to help others. They're overwhelmingly good. I've Some of the most significant things I've learned is are to first never judge people by the actions of their government.
Mm, that's a good one. Yeah.
I've also learned that people who have the least often give the most. That's something I've found to be true in all corners of the world. I've learned that travel taught me all these things. Every person's why is the same. We all eat, sleep, breathe, want to be happy, or chasing some kind of goal. It's only the how that changes from person to person.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some great lessons. Thank you for the insights there. It's definitely worth understanding those and reflecting on that. And it's an interesting reflection. Career transitions is another big topic of things these days, and for everyone, really, right? About well, when do I decide to try something else, or how do I pursue that? If you transitioning from the global traveler to professional speaker, author. What advice would you give to maybe young professionals who are thinking about looking to turn their passions into a career?
I would say don't be afraid to take risks.
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest challenges that early 20-year-olds or in that general age group, one of the biggest challenges they face is a poor relationship with time. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is this: all of these, all of your listeners, especially in that age, I would say to them, you could do nothing right for the next 15 years and still be young. Now, I know your listeners, they're going to do lots of things right, but take risks, be creative, think critically, make mistakes. Mistakes are proof that you're trying.
Yeah.
You don't have to be reckless or irresponsible, but now in those transitions, at this point, now is the time to try to figure out what you want.
I think it's so interesting because when I talk to a lot of the young students I engage with, they're like, "Well, I haven't had a job in my career yet." I'm like, "I don't think I have either." Because I don't even know what that looks
Exactly.
like, right? Like,
Right.
what does that look like? I mean, because you can have like a portfolio of experiences, like you said, and to your point, like explore it, like try things. That's how you find out what you don't like too, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Really, really,
Absolutely.
really good advice.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit uncertainty. It's been on everyone's mind lately with a lot of things going on, unfortunately, around the globe in so many shapes and form. But I'm pretty optimistic person, so I want to keep this all on the upbeat positive. But when you think about the unpredictable world, and what is going on, again, young professionals are trying to thrive in this world. Is there any advice or thoughts or strategies around that's uncertainty? I think you tapped into it a bit earlier, but like uncertainties in their career, um, looking at that from a different lens, any thoughts you would tell them to think about?
Well, I certainly agree with your point about the optimism. And I would say that uncertainty is a horrible thing to waste.
Mm,
As an athlete, entrepreneur, traveler, hostage, I say all the time that there's value and opportunity in every experience. And people ask me quite a bit, Sam, if you could go back, would you still travel the way you did or still go to Syria? And on one hand, I would never want to relive captivity and wouldn't wish that on anybody.
no,
But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would also never want to give up everything that's come from it. The opportunity to meet some remarkable people like this, to grow in character and in faith and really, Brian, in understanding of the stuff in life that actually matters.
yeah,
And those two things go together. So I often say I think we're all stronger and more resilient than we can imagine. And when we feel the most lost, I think we have the best chance for a huge breakthrough.
I feel the most loss or the biggest chance. I agree. Yeah, it's at that time where you can take a leap into something, try it. I wanted to ask you another question because talking about sports, and the hockey and Niagara and everything, I think also there's a lot of young people who are in sports. They either are, professionally going after something or they're doing sports in the universities or colleges around the North America, around the globe. I often tell students like don't downplay that. Like, maybe you couldn't make it out to an event, or maybe you weren't able to enroll in sort of a co-op program or whatever because you were on the field or you were on the ice or you were on whatever. But then those are lived experiences that every employer should want on their teams. What's your thoughts about the transferable skills from sports into like the real world of, I'll say operating, but you know what I mean?
I was a competitive athlete my entire life, and I have seen firsthand the way that the skills and traits from being a competitive athlete translate into my personal, professional life, and perhaps most importantly, when I'm at a low point or facing a significant challenge specific to my captivity. Those skills and traits, the mental toughness, critical thinking, resilience that I had
Yeah.
learned through being a competitive athlete. How often have we had a boss or coach tell us, control what you can control? I would have been in a different place at my lowest point, truly at rock bottom, without those skills. And we hear CEOs say all the time that they like to hire athletes. Athletes have an
Big time.
unusual ability to deal with failure, an unusual ability to deal with saying no and or being told no. And I don't think that when I was growing up, I recognized the skills that I was developing. But what I try to tell athletes today is the harder they work now, the better prepared they'll be in for life. And they may not even recognize it now, but those skills are being developed. And the harder they work, the better those skills will provide for them later.
Thanks for jumping in on that one because I feel like to your point, like they need to, I know they might not realize it, but we should talk about it because I know, I've seen it. I've seen the athletes in action in the workplace and the determination, the teamwork, the focus, right? I mean,
Performance under pressure.
performance under pressure. I rode crew on the Hudson River when I was in high school. It wasn't competitive, but getting up at before you went to school at 5 a.m. I think I was
Yeah,
pretty determined, right? And then built
that'll
some
teach you some life skills.
yeah, yeah, how to shower or not shower before school. But yeah, it was all good. But no, I really wanted to talk about that openly because of your competitive supports and being in that world. I think it's important for athletes who might be listening too to like when you're in a job interview, talk that up. Don't downplay it, right? Like,
100%. And you were talking about how they may have missed out on things growing up for sports, but I would argue it was worth it.
yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree. Um, you jumped in and talked a lot about resilience, and I think it's a topic that or a skill actually, especially in today's human skills that we're looking for young people and for all employees to have when we hire, especially with me in the talent place, we're always looking for resilience, critical thinking, all the other things. Um, but sometimes resilience for some people, they're not quite sure like, how to cultivate that in their personal and professional lives. Maybe even when they're setting, facing setbacks. Any thoughts or ideas on how do you cultivate that resilience? How do you build it? Yeah.
How do you build it? This may be a little bit counterintuitive, but I think one of the best ways to build resilience is to lean into gratitude. For me, it's the price of admission. It's the price of admission to even be able to consider thinking further down the line. I think the problem or the challenge that a lot of people have with gratitude is they lack perspective. And I try to use my experience, all of my experiences, to help people reframe their perspective because the better perspective they have, I think that leads to better decision making, which leads to being more resilient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's a good answer. I have to point out, I see a guitar in the back there. So
Oh
talking about
yeah, I can play
hobbies
just
and
just a few chords. Yeah,
yeah,
I've played I've played for several years. I love picking it up as much as I can, usually every day for even just for a few minutes. But it's a great hobby, and it's one of those things where you can always be better. So
yeah,
there's always something more to learn. I still, as far as hobbies, I still play hockey today. I still play once a week or so, and enjoy being out on the ice. It definitely beats running on a treadmill. And a recent hobby, I've actually been for the past 6 months, uh, I've been taking private pilot lessons. So I've been learning to
really.
fly a small Cessna 172 airplane. So as a hobby, I've been doing flight training, which I really enjoy, and that's something that's very humbling because it requires these very precise movements. And the second I think I've got things under control, something happens, and I realize that I have a lot to learn. So it keeps me humble for sure.
Who knows? That could be another career down the path, flying planes. Who knows, right?
It's a lot of fun. It's a thrill.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, one more thought I had, and then I'll ask you if you have anything else to share that I might not have asked you or wanted to touch on. But, you know, right now, obviously, reflecting and hearing your story, and I can't wait to read your book, to be honest. Freedom and purpose is something that, people also strive for. And you obviously had a very unique perspective or have a unique perspective on freedom. Um, what's your thoughts you know, about what that means to you and how you define that as you go through your day and the life that you live now?
Mm. Yeah, I feel so fortunate. I could repeat some of the things that I said about gratitude. Um, for me, a lot of that. a lot of that freedom of being able to pursue the things that I have has been rooted in just general curiosity. I think
That's a good one.
curiosity is I think it's the most consistent source of innovation and of worldly contributions and allowing us to be free. Uh, so I think that so much of what I've done in the past 10 or 15 years has been rooted in curiosity. And I would say that I would challenge anyone listening to instead of instead of saying no, say maybe and see where that takes you. I think the world the world belongs to the curious.
That's a great expression, and I agree with that too. Like you're taught as a kid to be curious and do all those things, and as we get older, we sometimes lose that focus to be. I saw a quote once about, coloring in the lines versus coloring out of the lines, and we should foster that through our whole life, not just when we're kids to be curious.
Oh, we watch kids running around the playground. They're going down the slides, they're climbing up things, they're getting dirty. Then I feel like as people get older, our society tells us that we have to go and fit into a box somewhere.
Yep.
And as a result, all that curiosity just goes out the window because we're trying to fit into some box. And I really try to challenge people to continue channeling that because it's where all the innovation starts from.
Thank you for that. I agree. I think like that's how you stand out. That's how innovation happens, right? So just keep that curiosity going. Um, I'm curious on one thing. Have you ever been to Toronto with I mean hockey in Canada? Have you ever been to the hockey museum here or been up here?
Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time in Toronto. I was actually there about 10 days ago. I was speaking at an event in Scarborough. So
Oh wow.
I a lot of my teammates from Niagara playing hockey there. They're from the area and still spend I have a one of my closest friends lives in Vaughan. I'm the godfather to his son and I spend quite a bit of time in the Toronto area, so I always enjoy my time up there.
All right. Well, next time you're here, I gotta take you out to my neighbor's restaurant. It's amazing. My
Oh my
treat.
gosh, I would love that. I
We'll
would
uh
love
we'll
that.
we'll check into that. So plug for that. But we did cover so much ground today. First of all, I know this is the lead up to your book. You got a lot going on, so thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast with everything happening. And I also wanted to give a plug for that too, if people are interested in looking at your book or getting your book. Where's the best place maybe to find that opportunity? Is it on your website? Is it where? Um, and if there's anything else that you wanted to share before we close out for the day with the listeners, I'd like to hear that too. So book, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian. It's great to be on the show today. And the book's called Saving Sam. It's available everywhere books are sold. There's an audio book. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere books are sold. And appreciate you mentioning that. And also, I would say that if anyone listening ever wants to reach out to me, please do that. I'm on all the normal social media channels, relatively easy to find, I think, and I would love to hear from you. I'd love to connect. So feel free to reach out anytime.
You might get that. We get a couple followers on this that might reach out to get your thoughts and advice of that transition from sports to the working world and everything in between.
Anytime.
And maybe where they start with this trek of all the countries. So
Anytime. Love talking about travel.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Sam. Again, thank you so much for being a part of Coffee with Convery. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
So for our listeners, if you like this podcast and you want to hear some more, make sure you follow us on Spotify, give us a rating. We're also on Instagram. This is Coffee with Convery, and where we show you that success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. So until next time, stay well, and we will see you soon.